Called March 2019 Steering Committee meeting to order, and our first item of business is to approve the minutes from our March 4th meeting. Ms. Scarlett mailed those out to us after the meeting, and they were available for our review. Is there a motion on those?
Mr. Chairman, I've viewed and I find that they're good and I move for their approval.
Got a motion by Commissioner Harris. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Cush. Any discussion or changes on the minutes? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So the next item is to discuss the Office of County Attorney, and there's really not a plan for tonight of how this goes. We want to discuss ideas and see which direction this committee would like to take us. But before we do that, I think it's really important that we meet our interim county attorney, Nick Christensen, and Mr. McCrary is here with him tonight. So if y'all want to come on up to the table with us, we'd appreciate that. And then Mr. McCrary, if you'd like to introduce Mr. Christensen to us, and then we can ask him questions if we have those.
Yeah, love to. Thank you for allowing us an opportunity. So let me start by saying under the most recent documents that were executed with the county, it provided that in the event I resigned or died or stopped serving for any reason, that Mr. Christensen would assume the role of county attorney in an interim basis at least. And so that's the state in which we find ourselves right now. The way the contract was written is such that it would not really require any action on your part. So I know we're sitting here talking about options with respect to this, which you're perfectly entitled to do, but you're not required to take any action. And if you don't take any action, then the system, if you will, that's in place now would just proceed. Mr. Christensen would just step into my shoes, and the balance of it would go forward as it has. Let me also just point out, before I get to Nick here for just one other kind of housekeeping matter, which is that by way of reminder, and Mr. Blair, for you for the first time, the contract is and has been in two pieces: the county attorney piece and the litigation piece. Everybody else, and you may know this, but everybody else will remember this. The litigation piece was not recently discussed. It was discussed 2 times ago and extended through June of 2022. And so me resigning doesn't impact that piece. It only impacts the piece, in my view, my opinion, of the county attorney bucket. And I think that's the language I used last time, which is the general services county attorney portion. So with that in mind, let me set the stage here for Nick just a little bit. Nick has been in our office he's into 7 years at our office. As you all know, we've done county work for many years, certainly all 7 of those years. Nick, in the time we've been doing it, has been involved from inception. From day one when he came to our office, he's been involved in county work. He's got a very good understanding at this point of county operations. He knows the county department heads. He's communicated with many of them. He's handled personally, without my involvement, many county matters over the years. In addition to that, he's been sort of behind the guy behind me, if you will. So when I've needed help with something or needed research, he typically has been, for the last several years, the kind of the go-to person on that stuff. And so he's with that, got a good understanding of what kinds of issues come up, how the communication flow should occur, and so forth. And that's critical. That's a huge advantage starting out when you want somebody who's just stepping into the shoes of the county attorney, because you're not going to drop a ball. You know all the right players. He's met many times with Mayor Ketron since Mayor Ketron's been in office. He's met with other department heads in the last several years. In addition to that, Nick's been in a lot of the litigation. I'm going to take all your everything left to say. All right.
Keep talking.
But he's been involved in lots of the cases as well. So typically, in the last few years, the vast majority of the lawsuits we've gotten have been federal lawsuits for whatever reason. It wasn't this way years ago. There were a lot of more state lawsuits, but in the last several years, they've mostly been federal lawsuits. Most of the time in federal cases, you'll put 2 lawyers in the file. And that's in part not necessarily because every 2 lawyers go to everything. It's because federal judges don't ask you about scheduling oftentimes. You'll get things from a federal judge that says, appear at a case management conference on this date. And if you're the only one in the file, you don't have much flexibility on that. So you'll often have a backup. And I say that to say Nick's been in a lot of these files with me over the last several years. So he has a very good understanding of the kinds of litigation issues the county has going on. And in addition to that, the way the process works. So we talked before, and I won't rehash all this. We've got the third-party administrator and the self-insured, which I guess is subject to change with the new TPA. But he knows all those players, and he knows how that process works, who to communicate with at the county, who to communicate with at CCMSI. Sometimes the reinsurance company is involved, how that communication flow works. All of those things are things Nick has a good understanding of from an administrative and real life functioning perspective. And that's the kind of thing that's hard to easily duplicate, in my opinion. So with that, I'll let you, if you have some stuff to add.
Let me just start by saying that I appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak to y'all. At the County Commission meeting last week, Mr. McCreary received a standing ovation of the work that he's done for this county, and I know that the county is sad to see him go. I'm also sad to see him go, both on a professional and a personal level, so thank you for the words that you said about me. In any relationship, I think it's important to understand somebody's personal background. I want to go over my experience from a legal perspective, but I think it's important that you all get to know me and where I come from. I'm a native here of Murfreesboro, was born here, in fact, baptized in the Methodist Church 2 blocks from here, over where the bell tower is. Parents were married in that church. Dad is a salesman, and so we moved around a little bit growing up as a child. But my grandparents, some of you may know them, Hal and Nancy Christensen. They owned a couple of businesses here over the years. They started the Cinema One business, which the movie theater, which turned into Cinema Two, and then they started the Blue Raider bookstore. Because they were here, I was able to come back to Murfreesboro during the holidays and the summer vacation months. They had a house over on Main Street across from the old Davis Market at the corner of Middle Tennessee. So growing up, I was very familiar with Murfreesboro, and my has it grown. Fortunately, my dad took a job here in the year 2000, and so we've been back here ever since. I'm a product of both Oakland and Siegel High Schools. I was there at Oakland for my first 3 years, and in my senior year, they opened up Siegel High School, and I made the decision to transfer there, and I was part of the first graduating class from Siegel High School. After that, I continued my educational career at David Lipscomb University. Spent 4 years there, got my major in political science and communication, and after that, I decided to become a lawyer. Good, bad, or indifferent, that's the decision that was made. That's God's plan for me. Went over to University of Memphis, spent 3 years there. Really liked the city of Memphis, but decided I wanted to start my legal career in the Middle Tennessee area where I had ties and family members. Fortunately, I had the opportunity to clerk for Judge Mark Rogers. He's a local circuit court judge, and I did that for about a year. And then I was blessed to have the opportunity after that point to start at my firm where I'm now a partner. And I've been there for going on my 7th year. So that's my personal background. I like to think of all of us that are sitting at this table as part of the county team, and I'm certainly part of that and have been since I was a young boy, and still am as I sit here today. In terms of a working or legal background, Josh touched on a lot of the points, but I have been heavily involved over the last 7 years. Many of the county attorney opinions that have been issued to the various department heads, maybe even to you, some of you commissioners when there have been questions, I have drafted. In terms of the litigation aspect of things, I've handled everything from small claims court general sessions cases on the civil side, all the way up to complex federal litigation in Nashville to United States District Court. Everything from civil rights lawsuits, ADA lawsuits, FMLA lawsuits, and complex class action lawsuits, which some of you are aware of. In addition to that, and aside from the zealous advocacy that I've done for the county over the last 7 years, I've been involved in the day-to-day operations. If somebody calls from the circuit court, if somebody calls from the county clerk's office, if somebody calls for the beer board, for whatever reason, we have at our office we're a county team as well, so if one of us can't take it, another one will. I've been heavily involved in dealing with that, day-to-day operations. I've also sat in on planning commission meetings. I've sat in on Board of Zoning Appeals meetings. I've sat in on beer board meetings, and I've sat in on commission meetings. So for me, this is a transition that's very natural. I'm accustomed to how everything operates in terms of procedure, Robert's Rules of Order, dealing with motions and amendments. You all had a bunch of those last Thursday. It was quite the meeting, and you gave Josh quite the task. I also like to say that if there is an answer that I don't know immediately for you, I am not going to come up with one just to have an answer for you. I will tell you that I will go and find the answer for you, and I feel like I have the tools and capability, and frankly, from our office, the institutional know-how by way of Jeff Reed and Roger Hudson in finding out those answers for you guys. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have now or later.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Christensen or Mr. McCrary?
Mr. Chairman, I was going to ask about all of the acronyms that you are aware of, but you kind of already touched on most of them. Do you want to go into the governmental tort part of it, your time defending that?
Sure, yeah. Well, as you all know, it's not the best in a public setting to describe the particulars of the factual circumstances of any given case. But when there's lawsuits filed in state court, generally that's going to be in circuit or chancery court right down the street at the new courthouse. Generally, they'll deal with what's called the Governmental Tort Liability Act. That's basically negligence lawsuits. So personal injury lawsuits is what primarily makes those up. Yes, handled those on a routine basis. Over the last number of years, as Mr. McCreary explained, the litigations have gone down, which I think is a great sign of what our firm has done. And one point that I wanted to earnestly give the steering committee for consideration is I view my role right now and in the immediate future as trying to facilitate the smoothest transition possible from Mr. McCreary to me. I understand the shoes that I have to fill and the gravity of the position and the work that it takes. I'm not a 9-to-5 lawyer. I work nights and I work weekends. You can ask my wife and 8-month-old daughter about that. But I have a heart to serve this county and to put in the work that's necessary, and I'm certainly capable of doing that.
Thank you.
Josh, so you're no longer going to be part of this law firm, right?
Right?
Okay, but you're not a partner.
I am, yes, sir.
You are a partner?
I'm a partner. I
Okay.
became a partner beginning January 1 of last year,
Of 18.
of 18.
Nick, let me ask you, with this, I guess you say role change, what you're going to be there, we see any problems or difficulties that change for you, or anything you'll have to deal with?
I think that I would be remiss if I didn't just state that there would be a honeymoon period, just like with any new person. That would be regardless of whether it was me or somebody else. I do think that the honeymoon period would be significantly shorter with me, and I fully expect to get up to speed on anything that I'm not already up to speed on. Josh alluded to that I have been the backup person throughout the 7 years, but really primarily, or more significantly, the last 2 to 3 years. So in terms of the things that are currently going on in the county, I'm very well adept and aware of. Can there be speed bumps? Sure, with anything. But as I've represented to you, as I go through this, if there's anything that I don't know the answer to immediately, I will go and get the answer. And it's something that I want to work through you guys with. I also note, Mr. Reed, that I plan to live here the rest of my life, And so for me, this is something that I would like to form the basis of a very long-term relationship, if that's something that the county wants to do, but we have to start somewhere.
Nick, do you also have some ideas or thoughts that you have seen in the past as, underling may not be the right word, but I can't think of a better, as an underling to Josh, and have viewed how he and the team have done business with the county? Perhaps can you bring a set of fresh ideas and thoughts, maybe how you would do things a little different, or we should be doing things a little different? That you, I won't ask you to go into details. We'll keep those secrets to yourself for now.
I don't have any secrets.
But
No.
well, I mean, I don't
Yeah.
necessarily want you to explain it here at the steering committee, but do you see room for improvement for the relationship with your group and our group, and things that the county's doing that we may do better? Do you see some possibility for improvement?
Yeah, so
for us?
I think the goal of everybody that invests the time and energy that you all do and that we do, it's always aimed towards progress. We all are trying to make this county the best county that we can be. Now, we all have different ideas about how that's done, but it's all coming from a good place. The lawyer's role, the way I understand it, is not to inject himself too much or herself into those policy decisions. In terms of guiding the county forward, yeah, I think I would bring a fresh perspective to things. That's not to say that Mr. McCreary, our office, hasn't done a superb job, and we have.
And I'm not.
Oh, I know, and I'm not taking that to mean that anyway at all. But moving forward, whenever you have a new human being that is sitting in the seat, there's naturally going to be the influence of whatever that happens, whatever that way that happens and fleshes out. So, Mayor.
Nick, you were, as you stated, you were kind of behind the scenes supporting Josh, as Josh was to Jim Cope. And this is an unexpected announcement for Josh to be leaving, so does the firm either have another Josh or a Nick to back you up, because you do have a private practice? Or do you have anticipations of hiring somebody to back you up to make sure that, you know, that total load is the county doesn't get less than what we've been expected to?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question, and it is a fair concern. We have Roger Hudson in our office and Jeff Reed in our office, who have a combined over 50 years of experience in handling an array of county matters. Whether this committee or the commission wants to actually put something in writing that there's going to be a backup, that's obviously up to you. I can tell you, as a represent to you now, though, that I would always have the backup of those individuals. We have associates that are in our office too that assist in day-to-day research questions. But if there's anybody that would need to be named, that's certainly something that we're open to discussing. The person that comes to mind would be Roger Hudson. He has been heavily involved over the last 34 to 38 years. I don't have that number exactly, but you all know Roger, and he's a great lawyer, and he's up to the task as well, if that's something that you all would desire to have in place.
Well, let me ask that same question a different way. If you were to take on this opportunity, which would require a lot more of your hours and time, does that put a load on the firm currently, which is now one man down? Does that put a strain on the firm's ability to service all your clients, including us? I guess I'll ask that question a different way.
No.
Are you a man down, and do you intend to hire somebody to fill that slot?
Well, I don't know exactly what our plans would be in terms of our hiring practices. We have an associate that is recently started, and we do have plans to hire another lawyer. To answer your immediate question, the answer is no. We've always had a next man up mentality, and I can personally tell you that for me, as a partner in that law firm, the legal services to the county will be nothing less than what Mr. McCreary has provided you. both in terms of time investment, energy, resources, and quality.
Any other questions for the attorneys? All right, well, thank you, gentlemen, for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Well, members, we have to decide where to go from here. I'm personally comfortable with Nick Christensen serving as the interim attorney until we decide what we're going to do for good. And we really have three options. We can maintain the status quo and just let this one ride through 2022 like the contract says. We can do an RFP and ask for proposals and solicit bids to see what kind of information comes in, and we could decide to go with, the same firm, different firm, or the third option is to create the in-house office. So those are really the three choices that we have. And I guess this committee needs to look at maybe a timeline of when we would like things to happen and what we want to do moving forward. So it's going to be a difficult decision, but we are up to the task, I do believe.
I mean, my confidence was in Josh. I mean, that's where my confidence was. So I really don't know Nick. But I think that Josh's recommendation as far as how I feel goes a long ways. So as for me, I'd rather see the status quo. And that's just my vote.
Mr. Chairman, I've had multiple current heads of departments voice their opinion to me. They have both being, really there's more than two, multiples have said that they have certainly appreciated Josh's experience, his quickness to respond, faith in Josh, and all have said that if Josh recommends Nick, then they are confident that Josh would not leave us in the lurch, and if Nick is his recommendation, that they feel confident that Nick would do a good job. So their suggestion was, if it's not broke, don't fix it, which is also my opinion. Of the three choices we have, the last one you mentioned would be to go with an in-house attorney. That is the least of my favorite thing to do. I am not a fan of growing government. I know other counties our size have that in play, and I know that those offices continue to grow with multiple attorneys on staff and legal folks on staff. And to what end, I don't know when that stops. So that is the least of my choice, is to go in-house. And again, I will go with my comment that I don't think this is broke, so I have no desire to fix it. We have shown that the cost to us is reasonable. So I'm happy to accept Nick as our replacement, and enough said.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the people that have come here today, their interest too. They're here. And in the same manner, we have other individuals out across the county that have shown some of the same interest and have asked these same questions. And even this weekend, I've run across that same situation, even phone calls, people suggesting their ideas and their plans, and some people that I tell you I have a lot of confidence in as far as what they suggest and things of this type. But when you do this and what you've been comfortable with and what you've seen and what you've worked with, it's hard to walk away from it. And I know from the fact of the times that I've called to our county attorney and called to that firm over there and asked for an opinion or asked for help in something, I called that morning, by that afternoon, I usually got an answer. And that's something you have to show confidence in. And when I heard Mr. Christensen say right here that he wrote a lot of those comments and things, Josh, what have you been doing? No.
Yeah, he meant some.
But I know that for a fact, and I've worked with some in some other situations where I've had to make contacts in other situations with individuals who have been connected with maybe in-house and all this sort of thing. I didn't get them back that fast, and things of that type. I know there are people wanting other things. I know there are people who would like to be a part of this or whatever. But I feel like it's sort of like we're in the 7th inning, and I don't think it's time to pull the manager out. I think we keep where we are and what we're going. So I'm in the same situation you heard from the other 2 commissioners here. I'd like to see where we're standing.
Commissioner McAdoo?
Thank you. I know Josh well. I've called and they have responded back very quickly. Now, my main concern right now is the number of lawsuits that we are involved with, especially this Candy Crush or whatever you want to call it. Nick has been involved with those. I don't think that we should be looking at changing. It's just my opinion. I think we should go with the status quo because we do have a slate of lawsuits on the table that they have been working with. So I'd hate to start back at square one on some of those lawsuits.
Can I just tell you, Nick's been on Candy Crush since the beginning.
I feel
Yeah, right, with me. So he's been in it from the day it got filed.
I guess it's my turn now.
I think I'm going last.
Okay.
I'm the rookie on the group.
Well, this being, I'm 3.5 years away from my first term. Tells you how long I've been commissioner. However, I read things and go back and watch meetings, and I've been doing that since around 2009 or 10. The 2 greatest disappointments that's happened to me in the last 6 months was Brad Turner and Josh McCreary leaving. Just took my breath away when I first heard it. Like, oh my God, great guys. Nick, I think I may have sat through some PZA meetings with you in the past, and I don't want anything I'm saying to take away from what I really feel about both of you and what I think about both of you. The top shelf. With that being said, my best recollection, and Mayor, you were here, generations ago, and they know more about this.
Wow.
This has been discussed for at least the last 10 years, if not longer. And I'm not headed towards the conversation that we need to do away with Nick and go this route. I don't think we have enough information to say that. But what I know, this has been kicked around long, and I'm of the opinion that we at least request, not just from the litigation part of it, that's ways out, July or something, or another, anyway. Years. I'm of the opinion that we go a little further in our diligence and decision making and put a request out there and get that information back. I mean, we may put that request out there, not a soul anywhere around here responds. but I would like to have, kind of head in that direction without that being the direction. Does that make sense?
It does.
So I personally, I have no problem with even, well, I have a problem with Josh because he's leaving, but I have no problem with Nick at all. And I don't question his competency or your work ethic or anything like that. But I would like to explore, send the RFPs out and see what kind of proposals we get back so that we can discuss further. That's just my opinion.
Commissioner Blair?
Of course, everyone knows I'm new to this seat, but I am not new to dealing with Jeff Reed and knowing his abilities and you having access to his talents. Of course, I haven't had a long time with Mr. McCreary, but I know you by reputation, and it's honorable and professional. I also don't know Mr. Hudson, but I know him through reputation and being a professional and very talented too. But what gives me rise to my confidence in your ability is their trust in you, Nick. And again, you having access to someone that I respect very highly in Jeff Reed. So I would certainly maintain the status quo, Mr. Chairman, based on my past relationships.
Well, do we have some kind of a motion from the floor?
Do we need a motion? Do we need any action?
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to stay where we are and continue the agreement that we had with Josh McQuarrie and put Nick in there. So my motion is that we keep status quo, stay where we're at.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Cush, any discussion on the motion? Now, there might be an opportunity here for us to clean up this contract a little bit. We're on the 5th amendment to this contract now. It might be good to just make a new one that has similar terms. We can have a new contract and clean up some of the issues that are in there. One thing that's been brought to our attention is that it says that the property tax collection attorney is Roger Hudson. The statutes say that the trustee picks that person each year in conjunction with the mayor. So I would like to see us take that sentence out of the contract and just let it say that the trustee and the mayor will pick the property tax collection attorney each year instead of us appointing that person. And I do believe that Mr. Hudson will be who they want to continue using, but I'm not sure that we can put in our document who that is because it's not our choice.
So you're just saying that we give that authority to the mayor and trustee?
And the
It's right
statute
there.
says that the trustee
That's what the
picks it
statute
in
says.
conjunction with the mayor, so we don't have any say on it at all for that. It just so happens in this case that their choice is the person that works at this firm.
You want that removed from the contract?
Well, I was just throwing that out there as a suggestion to maybe clean up and just get one new contract without all these amendments attached to it and just have a simple contract that's easier to understand and locate.
If you need a motion for that, I will make that motion.
Well,
If that's needed.
Why don't we vote on the current motion first to whether we're going to maintain the status quo, and then we can come back and address if we want to rework the contract and clean it up.
I'm with you.
So is there any more discussion on the motion currently to maintain the status quo? Let's call the roll on that one.
Commissioner Blair,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Cush,
Yes.
Commissioner McAdoo,
Yes.
Commissioner Reed,
Yes.
Commissioner Rather,
No.
Commissioner Stevens.
Yes. So, back to this contract, another thing that we might want to consider is designating someone to be Nick's backup. So if something happens to him, or if he takes a different job, we have someone as a backup to him that's designated as the county attorney. And
Can
I'm
we
not
go
sure-
through each amendment and talk about that?
Well, we can. The only one that's relevant today is the Fifth Amendment to
That's
the
the only one
contract.
you want to talk about on that?
All the other ones have been superseded by the Fifth Amendment. But those were two things in there that I would like to see us address with just a cleaner, newer version of the contract. Mr. Christensen, who do you think at your office would be the backup, or would y'all like to discuss that?
I think it's fair to the partners that we discuss that, but I can get back to you soon on it.
Because I do think we need to have a backup designated in case something happens to you, who's going to be able to act
I understand the request.
as the attorney.
And then strike section 4.
In the amendment?
Yes, sir. Roger Hudson.
Yes, or just to say that the trustee and the mayor will pick the back tax attorney according to law. Either way works there. So is there a motion on reworking the contract to clean it up?
And we're just removing this one item, correct?
And designating a backup to Nick Christensen?
Mr. Chairman, does 3A stay as written?
Yes, the salary and so forth would stay the same unless we wanted to, enter into new negotiations with them on that.
The so forth is more of what I had in question. Was there a debate about that at one time? We're okay with leaving the 3A as written, including the last line?
That's the way it is now, and we were advised by our HR director and the finance director that we can pay that person as an independent contractor, and they can be on the health
Okay.
insurance and life insurance. So
All right.
that's the status quo.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to amend, take out, and have the trustee and the mayor on the property tax attorney.
And does your motion also include designating a backup county attorney to serve as an interim?
Yes.
And that will be determined by the law firm?
Correct. So we have a motion by Commissioner Harris. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Reed. Any discussion on reworking the contract to clean it up and to do these two things here specifically?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
On behalf of Nick? Does the cleaning it up, are you envisioning not a Sixth Amendment? You're envisioning a legal services
A
agreement?
legal services
and
agreement.
just take out a lot of that 2010 language?
Yes.
And just make it easier?
We want to make it relevant to today and get rid of all those amendments, because it's very confusing to people. They think
is.
the other parts
It's
of
a little
it
bit confusing.
still apply and they don't.
All right.
So is there any more discussion on that motion?
So will we see a draft at our next full steering committee, the first of the month? And then approve that, or what's your thoughts, Mr. Chairman?
I don't know if 2 weeks is enough time to draft up a new contract.
If you have your regular scheduled meeting the month after, we can have something for you there.
So May?
Yes, sir.
I think that's a reasonable.
Yes. Not like we're in a hurry.
Is there any more discussion on the motion? Let's call the roll on this one too.
Commissioner Blair?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Kush?
Aye.
Commissioner McAdoo?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Commissioner Rather?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes. Are there any other questions or concerns from the committee?
Well, I would like to clarify my no. My no was not against you or Nick. My no was against the decision not to at least explore beyond instead of the status quo. So don't take that personal at all.
I don't.
I had a couple of questions that were sent to me by a constituent. I wanted to ask those to Nick and Josh really quick. It says that the decision is to stay with the contracted firm. What will be the method used to assure that no conflict of interest arises? And should the county require their list of private clients? So I'll pass that on.
Is that question one, or is that the whole list of questions?
Well, that's the first one, and there might be one more. I'll read that one, and if you want to answer the first one.
I guess.
Yeah, well, yeah, what I understand of the history here, this same question has been coming up for many years. And this committee and the county commission have spent hours of time dealing with this very question and vetting it. So I would rely upon the responses that have been provided previously and assure you that the same methodology that we have used for conflicts before will be the same methodology that will be used going forward. Lawyers are bound by an ethical code. It's promulgated by the Supreme Court of the state of Tennessee. And so that's where our conflict would lie in examining whether we do or do not have one, simply by representing private entities in addition to a governmental entity does not in and of itself make it a conflict in violation of our ethical rules. There has to be a substantially adverse interest involved in it. The rule is very specific on what sort of matters would conflict. And I can tell you, and I know Josh has in the past, if there is actually ever a conflict that rises to the level that we would have to withdraw under our ethical rules, we would. Lawyers really only have their name and their reputation. So it's very important that everything like this is vetted, and if there is a conflict, we would certainly deal with that then and there. To my knowledge, there hasn't been, at least since I've been a member of this firm and before.
Commissioner, who do you recognize?
I think Josh explained this pretty well in the last couple of months, and I hope I understood this correctly. It makes no difference if we're outsourcing the legal services to you, or we bring on as an employee an attorney or two or whatever. Even with an in-house attorney that's employed by the county, there could arise a conflict of interest. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes. That is,
So either way.
No, right. The idea of conflict, the way I said it last time was, and this is what I think is completely accurate. Conflict, the idea of a conflict of interest lives with the lawyer. It doesn't matter whether the lawyer is a contracted lawyer or an in-house lawyer. If you're a lawyer, you're governed by the rules of professional responsibility that Nick just alluded to, regardless of how your employment exists. So if any of these several guys right back here on the back row became the county attorney, they'd have the same issue. They'd have to analyze any kind of matter that came up to determine whether there was a potential conflict. If you hired some local lawyer in-house, just to make up an example, if you hired a lawyer in-house that was a local lawyer, and then somebody they had represented, a few months prior to you hiring them, decided to sue the county, then they would have to analyze whether they have a conflict of interest in defending the county. Not because they're in-house at that point or not in-house, but because they're a lawyer who represented an adverse party. That's how conflicts of interest work. And so you have to always be looking for those things, regardless. That
I want
answer your question?
Yes, you repeated the answer that I remember in a different way, but I just wanted to kind of put that under the camera and the microphones
Yeah.
again.
Yes.
Because even after that discussion, that's all I hear is the conflict of interest. You need to get your in-house, and I have to explain, it doesn't matter who we hire, where they came from. If we hire an attorney in-house, there could still be a conflict of interest pop up. And I think in the first time you answered that, you said any attorney,
Yes.
every attorney.
So I guess hypothetically, if you hired somebody who's only lived in Alaska, and then they come be your in-house attorney, they would still have to analyze if they have a conflict, but chances are high they wouldn't.
Our
They
luck is
still have,
they
the-
would.
yeah, well, they might, yeah, you'd find out they did, but that's the way the conflict rules work. It's not about whether you're in-house or not, it's about, are you governed by the rules? And every attorney is governed by those rules. As long as they carry a license, they're governed by those rules.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions about the attorney position?
Mr. Chairman, just to be clear, these dates, effective dates and end dates will not change.
That's correct. All right, was there any other business to be brought before the committee? There being none, we'll adjourn the meeting.